break it down to a way we all understand. So working with DAX is more like working with Excel functions for advanced part of it. So just see it as your go-to guy, a guy that you reach out to for calculations, or you're stuck somewhere and you need help. DAX is always there to help you out. Data analysis expression is it's the way you get different helps you to get different output from your table. Sometimes you get a table from a source, then you need another table. So there are three types of results you can get using DAX. You have the tables, you have the columns, and you have the measures. So when we're talking about the table, we're talking about calculated table. We're talking about when you're talking about the columns, you're talking about the calculated columns, and then you have the measures. So I'm just going to share screen so that um just get to work on the data we have here. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so
Yes.
I'll be working with this data set, the financials data set. Is the sample data set in Power BI. So I've tweaked it in such a way that it will work on it. So I'll come to the table. When we're talking about DAX, I have said it that a DAX data analysis expression is a calculation tool in Power BI. There are three results you can get from DAX. You have the calculated table, you have the calculated column, and you have the measures. When you're talking about the table, you have means that you've imported a table like this one that I have here. I need another table that is not coming from any other source. You need a table based on the information you have here. You don't need it from any source. You need to calculate it and you get it. That's your calculated table. Then when you're talking about calculated columns, you find out that the columns you have in your data set, there is an additional column that you need. You are not importing the column from another data set. You are not merging it because there is a way you merge and you get a column. You are calculating it from the existing um, columns you have here. That's when we talk about the calculated columns. Now, measures are the ones that calculate. Sometimes measures are like inherent in Power BI, like most of the aggregations you do in Power BI. Power BI automatically calculates the measures for you. Then there is another one that you calculate yourself. We call those one explicit measures. We'll still get there. So this table I have here, this a sample data set. I've said it in Power BI. So I have the segment, I have the country, I have the product, discount, units sold, manufacturing price, sales price, and this one. So I'll start from the calculated column. So we can see that from this data set, we don't have a profit. So can someone tell me how can we calculate the profits? Like which columns should I combine to get the profit for this data set? Can anyone help us out? You can type or you can unmute to talk. We have units sold, we have manufacturing price, we have sales price, we have sales, we have discounts. So we notice that we don't have a profit column here. So I want to add a column that is for profit. Which columns do you think I can combine to get the profit column?
Unit sold and sell price, I think.
Units sold and sales price. Are you sure about that?
I think manufacturing price and sales price.
Okay. What should I do to the two of them?
I think we are going
You
to
subtract sales price from manufacturing price. So
yes.
Okay. I'll subtract manufacturing price from sales price. So this is we are seeing on top of this place we have table. But if I click on any column here, there's an additional icon that will come up. This one is for the column the tools. So you either use the table tools and add a new column, or you come to the column tool and add a new column. Either ways, that works. So I'll just click on new column. So by default, it's going to open the formula bar for me, because on this new column, it has the message that said write a DAX expression that creates a new column in the selected table. So I'm going to write profit here. So we say this sales price minus manufacturing price, right? So you see that the moment I'm typing sales, it's already bringing everything out for me. So the table itself, financials, and the column sales price, it always puts the column in a square bracket. So this one is for the sales itself. So this is not the one we are interested in. We are interested in the sales price. So I'm just going to click on this sales price, and I'll subtract manufacturing price. So the same way, I just typed, I was just trying to type manufacturing, then manufacturing price pops out. So I'm going to select this. Either I click enter, or I'll click on this symbol here. So we see we have the profits column, and we can confirm that 350 minus 3 is 347. This is similar to what we did in Power Query, right? When we are doing the custom column. Because if you remember, let me go for the So if you remember, if you can come to add column and you see a custom column, right? Where you get to do your sales price minus manufacturing price. So this is quite similar to, just going to calculate. This is quite similar to what we have there. So it's not. So we have the calculated column now. That's the profit column. Now, when we talk about the calculated table, before we move forward, does anyone have a problem with this one we just? Does anyone have a problem with the one we just worked on? Okay. Okay, that's fine. So about calculated table, most of the times when we are talking about calculated table, the one that is most often used is the dates function is the date table. So there are sometimes you see that you have a table that has a date column. So you want to have a date table separately that you can use to filter the data sets. You can use it as a filter option for the data set. So when you realize that you need a calculated table, a date table, you can always come to this table and you click on new table. So by default, it opens up this view for you. This is the column, then it opens up the function for you to trying to get this out. Okay, we still have our profit. So the new table, we're going to call it this table. So now we want to obtain a table using a DAX function. We're trying to use calculation to obtain another table that it's not in our data source. So I'm just going to type the calendar function, and we can see that we have the calendar and the calendar auto function. So basically the difference between these two functions is that when you're using the calendar option, you have to specify the start and the end date, right? So I'm just going to click on it. So we'll see the all right. Let me go there. So I'll start again. The new table. So the calendar takes two arguments, start date and the end date. While the calendar auto, it automatically looks at the tables you have in your model and detects the start date, the start year there and the end year there. So what it basically does is, if, for example, the date column you have in your data model is 2021 and 2022. It's going to start from 1st of January 2021 and it's going to end the date table in 31st of December 2020. So you don't need to specify the start date and end. So I'm just going to click use calendar auto because we already have a date. Just come back to because we already have a date column. So it has already run. So we can see that this table is starting from 2013 and can sort the trend in here. So we'll see the last, and it's ending 31st of December. So basically, this is a 2-year data set. So it's running from 2013, 2014. Okay. Does anyone have any question?
So which one is the start video?
Does anyone have any question, please? Do we understand how we got the date table?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I thought he had a question. So from this date table, I can decide to go further to get other tables from it. Maybe I get the month and I also get the year. I mean, so we can add a new column here. So we can add a new column and call it the year. We can write the year function, year of trying to extract. So we've been able to extract the year from this sorted independent. I can just clear sort. And now we have the date table, which has the date column and the year column. So this is about your calculated table and your calculated column. Now, when we talk about measures, so we can see that when we did calculated, well, if we do calculated column, we're able to see the results. You see, do calculated table, we're able to see the result. But when you do a measure, you don't get to see the result of a measure until you apply it to a visual. And when we are talking about the measure in Power BI, they are of two types. Talk about your implicit measure and you talk about the explicit measure. So the implicit measure is the one that Power BI automatically calculates for you. So most of the times when you're creating your charts, there are lots of calculation that is going on beneath just drag and drop. So let's say we just select this table and we do the for each product, sales for each product. So we see the sum of sales for each product. So this sum of sales you're seeing here, it's a measure that has been calculated by Power BI. So this is an example of implicit measure. It's done automatically by Power BI. So it has to do with more with your aggregations and all that. If you want to change to average, you can easily come here and change to average. Power BI does it for you. So these type of calculations are implicit measures. But what if what you want to do is you want to get the average sales, but for each of the years? Another way of getting it is if you introduce the slicers and the slicer will do it for you. But you can actually use DAX, calculate the average sales for each year. For slicers will do it for you, but you only have one option. So when you want to filter, when you want to do those measures, calculate those measures yourself, that's where you're talking about the explicit measures. Most of the times, the KPIs we use in dashboard is gotten with explicit measures. Either you just, except if something like sum of sales, but most of the time that you do your distinct count and everything, it's the measures that you use. So these measures, it doesn't give you a result in that you can see with your eyes unless you create a chart with it. If you want to create a measure, you can use the new measure icon, or you can use the quick measures. Quick measures, the functions has already been written for you. You just need to. So this new measure, you either click from here or you select it directly from the table. So one thing is, if you click on new measure from here, automatically you are not defining the table you want it to assign the measure in. So it's going to the first table. So I will remove this measure. It goes by itself because we have not calculated. So I want to create a measure in this financials table. So I'll right click here and you see the new measure. So I'll click on this new measure. And I want to calculate the sum of sales again. So I'll call it total sales. So I will just select the financials sales table. And I just clicked enter. So you see here that you have your calculated measure. So when you have a measure, it comes with this calculator symbol. We can see the column calculated. This is the symbol it came with. You are seeing that it's a column that was summed up. Then for the one of date table, it has something like schema database design. So you get to see that this is a table that was calculated using that. If we used the Power Query function for calculated column, the one that I showed you, the custom column, this profit table won't come out like this, the profit column. But because we got it by calculated using DAX, you are seeing the format here, the symbol here showing you that this particular column was calculated using DAX. Now, this measure, you can see that this was calculated using the measure. So now I have the total sales. So let me come back to this and change it to total sum. Now I can select the table chart and I select product again. I can bring this total sales that I have calculated here, and you see that we have the same thing, right? So it's either this one was gotten using implicit measure, but this one was calculated using the explicit measure that we had to calculate ourselves. So one of the things about this implicit measure is that you cannot customize it to your own view. Maybe I want to add year, right? The one for the years. I won't be able to tweak this one to my taste. But when I use the calculated sales, I have a lot of options on how to navigate. So under the explicit measures, we're talking about the anchors, we talk about the filters, and we talk about the variance. What we just did is an example of an anchor measure under explicit. So anchors basically are like, just like the name implies, they are those functions that other advanced functions rely on. They are more of your aggregators. When you talk about your sum, you talk about your average, you talk about your count, your distinct count, and all that. Maybe for distinct counts now, if I click on, I'm on this table, and I click on new measure, and I want to count the number of sales or count the number of products that we have, or what else do we have? Yeah, okay. Count the number of sales. Let's do number of sales. So we can do you see your distinct counts by a pops up. You have a lot of functions. You just select the one you want. So I want to do distinct count of the sales. Okay, I can't get distinct count of sales because sales is numbers. So let's do distinct count of the country, so I will know the number of countries that we are. If you don't do this, I hope we understand what distinct count means. If you do count, you are counting everything regardless of the duplicates. When you are doing distinct count, you are counting unique, you are counting the variables in that particular column, the number of different variables that are in that particular, regardless of whether it's duplicate or not. I just want one of it. So I did not rename it. It's countries, non-number of sales. But yes, if I want to get this number of sales or total number of orders that occurred here, I can count rows, the number of rows I have. That's one way of getting the total number of orders. But for this one, let's do countries. So going to change here to countries, and I can select do a card visual. And put it coming up. And we see that we have 5 countries. If you have sales, you can do sum of sales and put it up like this. But another way of doing it is just to come here and put some, because the sales are already there, and you can sum it up. You can drag sales. I can drag sales here, and I have the total sum of sales. So I don't need to create a calculated measure for this one. So those are examples of our anchors. So when we are talking about, when we talk about the filter, maybe we want to get total sales for a particular year. If I want to do total sales for like 2014 here, I won't be able to access this unless I have a slicer that, I know we've not done the visual part, but I will just brief you on what a slicer does. What a slicer basically does is that it helps you to filter for a particular category that you selected. Some of them used to be, sometimes it's in continuous method, probably for numbers or for years, for days. But this one that we have just 2 years, and I've selected year, so the category is year. So if I select for 2014 now, guys, just use this one. So if I select for 2014, so this is sales for 2014, and if I select for 20, oh, it's not, the filter is not working. The reason the filter is not working is because we did not connect our data model. So back to our last class, we can see that these two tables are not connected. So there is no way we're going to see any insight. The insight is going to make sense if we want to do it according to years. So I'm just going to connect these tables on the dates table because that's what they have in common. So we are going on one to many. So the data table has each date occurring once. For the financials, we can have like 10 others coming in the same day. So this makes sense. So we come back here and we see that the sum of sales have changed. So this is sum of sales. I'm going to expand. I hope we are seeing this. So this is sum of sales for 2013 now. If I click on 2014, get to the one for 2014. So I'm just going to remove the highlights. We get to see. Now if I want to do a DAX calculation that helps me to get my sum of sales for 2013 for this particular product, I can come on the DAX. Now I'm going to talk about the filter explicit measure. We've talked about the anchor. Now we're going to do something about filter. So what the filter basically does is I want to customize this table in such a way that I can be able to have a column that has maybe 2013 sales. So I'll just use the calculate function. So what this calculate function, I could have just done everything straight, but what calculate function does is it has a way of restricting the filters you have inside it. So the calculate function um is a versatile function that it takes other functions inside it, right? It's a kind of way of restricting those functions to the particular filter you leave inside it. So I'm going to calculate. Now it's asking me for expression. I can use the same expression. That's the total sales. Which I used sum of sales, right? So I'm going to do sum of sales as the expression, and I'll do I think close it. So these are the arguments that the calculate function is taking. You do your expression, which is the mathematics you want to calculate. Then the first one, the argument that is here now is the filter. It's now asking what filter you want to address to this. When a function is wrapped in a square bracket, it's not compulsory, right? So I can decide to put a filter. I can decide not to put a filter. But now I want to put a filter. So I want to filter it by using, I want to filter it using the date table for the year of 2013. Um, Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So hopefully the function is up now. Sorry. Please, does anyone have any questions so far? Hello? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, I can.
Does anyone have any questions so far?
I'll have to go through the video again. But it's
Okay.
quite explanatory, yes.
Okay. We'll just I'll just be trying to go slowly because I think I'm talking fast. Am I talking fast?
Not too fast.
Okay. So we are trying to filter the calculation so that we just don't want the sales. We want the sales. So this argument, we want where the year is equals to this 2013 sales, right? So let me we're supposed to put that in posture. Okay, yeah, that works. So this has given us the sales for 2013 instead of using this filter. Now, if I click on this filter, it's the same thing, right? If I click on 2014, this is total sales for 2014, but this is a customized. I've used the calculate function to customize this. You see, it's not the filter, the slicer is not affecting it. So when I click on the 2013, the values are the same because this is total sales for 2013. This is 2013 sales. It's a restriction. So if we want to do the same for 2014, we do the one for 2014. So this is an example of a filter measure. Now, when we are talking about the absolute measure, it's that's the last we're talking about the variance measure. That's the last type of the explicit measure. We've talked about the anchor, and now we've talked about the filter measure. Now we are talking about the variance measure. An example of that is you want to check previous what you have in your previous year and what you have in the current year. You want to check your sum of sales for the previous year and you check the sum of years sales for the current year, and you take the difference to know the more like knowing your percentage increase or something. So that's where you use those kind of functions. So an example of that, we have absolute measure or you have the relative measure. So the one I just talked about, we can try to do the sum of sales for the previous year and use it to compare. So I'll come to this table again, financial table. I'll click on new measure. So I'll call it sales previous year. So again, we are using the calculate function. Is a very good friend to like apply the restriction. So the expression, same expression we've been using, the sum of sales. Close the brackets. So now we want to use the previous year. So there is a function called previous year. This is it. It states previous year, returns the previous year. So I'm going to, where is the first argument here is the date. So our date is in the date table. Date table, the date. So I'm just going to close this function and close again because of this brackets. So what it basically does is it sums the financial sales and also calculates the previous and gets the one for the previous year. So I'm just going to enter this. So I can add this. Oh, sorry. I'll click on this. I'll add this. What I type Salis. So I'll just double click here to edit the name. So it's blank. Okay, the reason it's blank is because let me remove this product and put here. Where did I put here? Let me just use this. Remove quarter, remove month, remove day. Okay, yeah. So this is what we have. The reason here didn't work is because it's a sum. I have to come here and change. Okay, let's just start someone that has the same problem. When you have the same problem, you know what to do. So the data type here is a whole number. So I have to change this to date. Don't summarize. Data category. Ah, sorry. Is it data type? Right. So I need to change this data type. Date. I don't know why it's being stubborn. So I've changed it to text, changing it to Hmm. Trying to recalculate it again, so I'll set right. Value. Oh, cannot find name. Date. Something is wrong with our table. I'm doing sprint 20. So it's seeing it as a whole number. Okay, let me just ignore it. When I figure out what's happening, I will let you guys know. So I used the date itself and I drilled it down to the way I did this is I selected the dates and it brought out when you select a date that is a date format date, bring out the day, the month, and the year and quarter too. So I removed the quarter, the year, and the days and everything, and I left it to only the year itself. So now we have 2013 and 2014, and we are seeing the sum of sales for 20. This is the total sales column, and we are seeing this sum of sales for 2013, 26 million plus. Then for 2014 is 92 million. Now, if you look at this, the reason this one is blank is because there's no previous year, right? The previous year is 2012, so we don't have it. So it's like this. So this particular DAX is helpful for people that are into time series or something. When you want to, for the previous year, you want to check for previous year instead of calculating it manually. So this helps you. If you have like 10 years data set, so that the data keeps moving one step. So this is for the previous year. For 2014 is 2013. So this is sales for the previous year. So that's it for the sales for previous year. Now, when you want to do the relative, when you now want to do combine everything, so you now do your you can do sales for 2013, then sales for 2014, and we check the percentage increase, or how far there has been growth in the company. So we can calculate that using the absolute, let's create another measure, call it absolute variance. Remember that every column we've been using for this one, they are explicit. They are the ones that we've been calculating ourselves. So for this one is absolute variance, and we now do the sales amount for this year minus sales amount for previous year, because we already have the total sales and we have sales for previous year. So I'm just going to do it equals to total sales minus sales previous year. Date table. Let me just remove it and create it in the financials table. So I need a new measure. Absolute variance. Total sales minus sales previous year. So it's here now. We can drag it here, and we have the absolute. You see that for 2013 that we don't have for previous year, it remains the same. Now for 2014 that we have the sales 92 million, and for previous year is 26 million. Now we have the absolute variance. Now we can try and get the relative variance. It's what helps us to know, oh, what percentage increase did we have. So I'll just create another measure and call it relative variance. So your relative variance is basically this your absolute variance over your total sales. I want to get my total sales minus the one I did for the previous year, all over the sales amount for the previous year. It's more like when we are doing percentage loss or percentage increase in percentage profit mathematics. It's your amount you sell minus is your how do you do the calculation again? I have a chart. How do you know when to put absolute and relative into use? Okay, absolute actually follows your relative. Okay, for absolute, you're talking about, I just talked about it. You're doing a time series analysis and you want to check percentage increase. Maybe you are having daily sales or yearly sales. So you want to know how much percent your goods have increased, how much your goods have increased, or how much profits, how much increase in profits. Or let's say now in Nigeria, fuel increased from, how much did it increase from again? 250, 650. You want to know how much percent increase that happened. So you are calculating, what you're basically calculating is that 650 minus the 250, the amount it gives. You now divide it, that will give you 650 to give you 650 to give you 400, right? So you now divide that 400 by the original price that you had. That's that 250. So that will give you the percentage increase you had in fuel. So that's the logic we want to apply here, right? So we want to do sales amount minus the previous year sales amount, and we now divide it by the sales amount for that previous year to know how many percent increase gotten. So I'm going to come here and do our total sales minus the one we had for the last year, which is our sales previous year. I'm going to wrap this into a bracket because so that it gets to aggregate this first before it moves to this one. So I'll divide it with the one of previous years. I will know how much it has increased. Okay, bracket. I just hope the mathematics is not getting too much. When you get to use DAX more often, you get used to, just like the way you got used to your Excel functions. So we've gotten relative, we'll drag it. So this one is infinity because we are dividing by 0. So I'll just remove for 2013. Just want to and leave it only for 2014. Because for 2013 we are dividing by 0. So the relative variance here, we can see that it's 2.49. We can try to change this to percentage. Don't forget, I just clicked on it's on the table. Then I have this option here. The option I clicked on the table and I have the option, I clicked on the percentage. So we are seeing that there is 249% increase from last year's price. So, where you can apply kind of this kind of function, most especially in sales, or maybe something like in crypto, right? You see the price of Bitcoin today and the price of Bitcoin yesterday. you want to know the percentage increase or percentage decrease, you can create a custom function that calculates the absolute variance. The absolute variance is it calculating the price today minus the price yesterday. So you get your absolute variance. So now that your relative variance will now be that absolute variance you got. Divide it by what you have for this year again to try and know the percentage increase that you've gotten, because that's just what we did with this relative variance. You already have your absolute variance, which is the total sales minus the sales for previous year. So you just do this absolute variance over the one for previous year. So you have your relative variance. That's another way we can do it. This formula we wrote here, we can do absolute variance. Let me rewrite it. So you still basically have the same thing. So it's absolute variance all over the our sales for the previous year. I know the information is much. That's DAX. That's how DAX comes, and you might not get to grab everything in today's class, but the more you practice with, the more you get to it. Most of the times you use it for your KPIs. Most of the KPIs you see at the top of the dashboard, you use the measure, new measure to create it. You don't always need the calculated table, but when you need it, create it. Most often date table, so you can use it filter. Now this one, the one that we created, this column of year is converting it to date format. It's not working out quite well, so I'll check out why this is not working out well. It's supposed to automatically be in date format when we create it from the date table, but it's not. So I'll check through everything and I'll let us know. Please, does anyone have any question?
None for now.
None for now.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand today's class?
Yes, but I have to go through the class, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
Again, yes.
You also have to understand that you don't get to use all the information at once. Different data sets has different requirements. It's not all data sets that you have to the absolute variance. Most of the times, I can say that I've not used it since I learned it, right? But it doesn't mean that I won't still use it. So there are a lot of other functions that you have in DAX that the more you are working with data sets, you recognize a problem. Oh, there is this stuff I want to, how do I do it? You can always make research to find resources, find the usefulness of each and every function in DAX that you can apply. I did not cover all of them here, which you obviously, there are lots of functions in DAX, just like there are lots of functions in Excel. So each one comes, use it, and you get to apply it depending on the requirements of your data set. So apart from you, does anyone have a question? No question. Okay, the session is recorded. Let me stop recording. Yeah.